Hey everybody, today we are going to work on making like a little tutorial manager where, like a cutscene manager, it could be whatever you want it to be, um, where when you, uh, when you go into a sequence, it will check certain values, and if those values are true, then it will try to play a cutscene. And the cutscene in this case is literally just going to be um, this conversation. And instead of if I go to my that particular scene, I think it's mobile UI scene. If I go to this particular scene, the dialog manager had a set of debug dialogues that it just plays on start. But we actually don't want that. We want it to wait and then play any set of dialogue. So let's hop over to the dialog manager and let's, instead of on awake, I don't want to trigger those dialogues as Fako dialogues. I want to have some real stuff happen. And I could have a tutorial manager that whenever a level starts figures out if a tutorial, which is just text fields, should play. I could have a collider where when I hit the collider, it triggers a certain sequence to play once, like a certain set of conversation. There's so many different applications to this system. I'm specifically going to do a tutorial where when the game loads in, it decides whether or not it should play a particular tutorial. So let's, with that said, get our game on. I'm going to have a tutorial system. Tutorials. And maybe I'll have a tutorial manager. Create C# script tutorial manager. And then I'll have a C# script for tutorial objects. And maybe the objects would have an animation to play, a dialogue sequence to cue, all that kind of stuff. So a tutorial object to start. I really should have named object. I'll fix it over here as well. Boom. And I'm going to steal some code from my other system. The audio manager had some audio cues, right? Unless I didn't do it that way. Oh, I didn't do it that way. Okay, that's fine. Checking here. Yeah, looks like I just put it all in there. That's all right. I'll make it a scriptable object so that we know how it works. Audio manager. For this stuff, I will have audio. Back up. Go back up a folder. Go into tutorials, tutorial object, and I'll have tutorial object be of type scriptable object. And let me go to my handy dandy Google search here, and I'll look up scriptable object Unity. Just want to get the syntax right the first time. I'm specifically looking for this line of code right here. Boom. So I'm going to put this at the top, and that tells me, that says in Unity's menu layout, where should this thing reside. I actually want it's the file name whenever I create one of these to be tutorial object. That's fine. And I want it to be inside of sure, I'll put it in there, but tutorial object. I don't know, I don't recall what order is. Maybe that gives it priority. Okay, yeah, it gives it priority. So now if I go back into here, I should be able to go to right click, create scriptable objects, tutorial objects. So now I can make a new tutorial object. Demo. It doesn't have anything in it, but if I go back to tutorial object, I can fill it in with some values that I'd like to use. So let's go back into my dialog manager just to make sure I know I think I want an array of dialog objects like that. Every tutorial object is going to be going to have a set of dialogues, and that dialog set is going to be from the dialog manager. I can do it like this, or I could say using dialog manager, and then I guess I can't do that. I have to put it in a namespace. That's fine. So dialog manager dot dialog object. Now I have a series of dialogues. And if I go back to here into my tutorials, now I have the same thing as I did before with that dialog manager. I can create a series of dialog elements. So now I want thinking. Not only do I want dialogues, maybe I could also play animations, maybe trigger a sound. Who knows what these tutorial elements would be. And I don't know if they would be inside of the dialog object itself. But I think I like that. I'm gonna have serialize field, public audio clip, audio cue, dialog audio. Boom. So that now if I ever wanted there to be like a sound that plays, like it reads out the text, we can have it happen right there. So we have a tutorial object, and all it is this for now. And the dialog manager, or the tutorial manager can manage all these tutorials, can manage all these desired events. The other thing I'd want a tutorial object to have is like an ID. So that I can check to see if it's played yet or not. So that it only plays the first time that I go into a scene. So now that I have this set up, tutorial manager, maybe I have like a public void trigger tutorial, and I'm just thinking out loud. I could also have the tutorial objects only be triggerable from certain levels. That's a possibility. I'll do it as simply as I can at the moment. So void start, on start, just trigger next tutorial. And I'll make this method called the same thing. The tutorial manager will also have a list of those tutorial objects. Public tutorial object array tutorials. And then I would have to go through and check to see if tutorials have been queued yet. So on start, I'll do a for each loop of all my tutorials. Tutorial object TO in tutorials. The TO just stands for tutorial object. I could also just make it T. Do I have a data manager? I don't believe I do. I can say player prefs dot get. I call it like a save manager, perhaps. Oh, I didn't. Try a different tutorial elsewhere. Okay, so I can say if t dot ID, right? So I have the ID, and I want to say if player prefs dot get int. An int is just an integer, so it could be 0 or 1. 0 means it hasn't played, 1 means it has played. And I'll give it a default value of 0. So if the value didn't exist yet, just pass along 0. And I can say if if that gave me a 1, so if it hasn't yet played, then do something. Just thinking here. Let's assume I'll do a return at some point if that tutorial hasn't played yet. That way I know that I can stop looping through all my tutorials because I found the one that I wanted. I could also say like get next tutorial and pass it along. Fine. So let's public tutorial object get current tutorial object, boom, and it'll return just like this. I'll put this in there. Return T. If I didn't find anything, I'll return null. Tutorial object next tutorial equals get current tutorial object. If next tutorial is not equal to null, then now I can do something with it. That's a little cleaner. I like this way more. So I can say if next tutorial is not equal to null, then my dialog is going to be dialog manager.dialog object array current dialog equals next tutorial dot dialogs. And now I can find the dialog manager. I believe it'll be game object dot find object of type dialog manager dot, and then it's called like play dialog trigger dialog series, and I will trigger whatever series I have in my current dialog. And we can add some checks and balances. So I can say, just in case anything ever breaks, we'll protect ourselves from it. So I can say dialog manager dm equals this. And then I can only run this if I found that dm, that dialog manager. If dm is not equal to null, then run the dialog manager. By the way, if you have an if statement and it's only one line of code, I don't technically need curlies, but I'll add the curlies just for clarity. So if dm is not equal to null, then dm dot trigger the dialog series. Cool. Next step. I also want to know if current dialog dot length is greater than 0. That's the only case in which I'd want to play dialogue, is if I actually have any. Because what if this tutorial is just playing sound or something, or putting an image up? I don't want to assume that it's always going to be dialogue. So now I check, okay, do I have dialogue elements inside of my array? And does my dialogue manager exist? I don't believe I made this a singleton. Yeah, so I can't assume. So now, when I press play, nothing should happen, because I don't yet have a tutorial manager in here. Let me turn off my dialog panel. Boom. So now when I press play, nothing should happen, other than this sick music playing. But if I add in a tutorial manager object, create empty tutorial manager, and I put this tutorial manager script on it. I can add a few dialog elements, I don't know. And these dialog elements, excuse me, wrong one, delete. I meant to say tutorial objects. I can have tutorial objects on it. 1. Boom. So now this tutorial object has been accounted for. And then I can go to my tutorial demo. And I can add whatever sprites I want. I think I had a little sword and a shield. I think I had like, name is Jimmy John. And Mickey D. The dialogue will be, I like sandwiches. I like nuggets. Now when I press play, if everything goes according to plan, the tutorial manager is going to trigger the next tutorial right when it starts. It'll go through, it'll get the current tutorial object by trying to find it. Boom. Then it will go through, after it's found the tutorial, it'll say, okay, if my next tutorial is not null, and I have a set of dialogue in there, and I have a dialogue manager I can talk to, then trigger a tutorial series. And after I've triggered the tutorial series, I actually want to now verify set int. I now want to say that I have next tutorial. Now I am saving the fact that I played the tutorial, so it'll only happen once. And it'll happen once based on this ID, because I'm saving the value with player prefs. That's what player prefs is for. So, boom, boom, boom. I'll press play. I'll go in from the other scene, the start screen. And when I press play, we should see Jimmy John talking to us. Or not. So let's see what happened. I have my tutorial manager. The tutorial manager has an array of values. And let's think about this. Go back to mobile UI. What did I do wrong? I might have hidden the wrong object on the dialog panel. I don't override close panel here, so that means that I am working with the right one. So let's go back over here, tutorial object, tutorial manager. My dialog manager there, dialog panel. Trigger dialog series, current dialog index equals 0. Dialog series equals this, the thing that I passed through. Okay, so debug.log, oh, way off. Debug.log getting instruction to play dialog series. And I'll just list off the first element, dialog series 0.dialog. I'll also have in tutorial manager, I'll say right here, to trigger next tutorial, I'll say debug.log tutorial was found. If the length is greater than 0, debug.log tutorial has dialog to play, ... And right here, I'll add debug.log attempting to play dialogue. Boom. So I added all my debug logs. I should be able to trace it and see what's going on. And here I'll say debug.log player prefs is being checked plus t.tutorial ID plus comma plus player prefs dot get int t.tutorial ID, and it should have already been either 0 or otherwise. .toString. And let me clean this up a bit just so it's less gross. Int has played equals that. Now I can have has tutorial played, boom. And I can move this up here. Has tutorial played dot toString. Now I should see player prefs is being checked, tutorial 1, comma, 0 or 1. All right, here we go. I'll change the name of that tutorial just to make sure that my save file didn't already save that it played. Tutorial 2. And I'll press play. Let me hit clear here. Play. So 2, comma 0. If it's equal to duh. Return it if it hasn't yet played, not if it has played. So I want it to be 0, not 1. Classic Justin. So I should see it the first time. I like sandwiches, I like nuggets, and it's done. But if I press play and I play again, it will not appear because I'm a liar. So that time I should have seen, press play. Two comma 0. Okay. Tutorial is found. Tutorial is playing. Getting instruction to play series. I'm a huge liar. So what did I do wrong? So I would have... Oh, that's what I did wrong. That'll do it. I actually want to set it to 1 instead of 0. So let's pop back over. Now when it plays the dialogue, it should only do it the first time. And when I leave and come back, it will not play it. But let me change the name of it to Dialog 3. Boom. Save. Have I... So it says 3, 0. Getting instruction to play. I like sandwiches. Player prefs is checked. Getting instruction to play. I like sandwiches. What happens if I don't have this value here? I have it set back to tutorial 0. What happens? Let's press play. I get it. Getting instruction. It hasn't been played yet. It found the tutorial and then it runs it through. Okay. So now I'm gonna have tutorial 0. I'm just gonna keep adding zeros. And what happens when we set it to after it's played the dialogue, it sets the integer set int next tutorial dot tutorial ID, and then I believe it's comma to the value of 1, so that the next time it should not trigger. I might have also just been pressing play too fast before things can compile. Interesting. So something is going off. Something is amiss when I set that value to 1 right away. So trigger the dialog series. Dialog manager. Getting instruction to play dialog series. Boom, boom, boom. We read this loop again. I put it here. I wonder if it's all happening the same frame. So it's like confusing itself. Possible. Weird. Alright, so I'm going to take 5 minutes to use the restroom and I'll be right back. Alright, so basically the issue was that the tutorial getting told to complete at the same time as it was getting told to run was somehow interrupting the original if statement. So what I had to do instead was wait some amount of time before marking the tutorial as completed. And I did that as follows. First, I broke off that set integer of my player press into its own method, so it's cleaner. And then I created a coroutine. That's something that can wait an amount of time before something is completed. That coroutine in this case is IE numerator. That's how you refer to a coroutine. Finish tutorial after delay, and the name of the tutorial. So I wait for 2 seconds, and then I mark the tutorial as complete. It's just a silly C# ism. So I believe this should have covered what we need. So now when I press, all I did was I added this line of code here, start coroutine, finish tutorial after delay, wait 2 seconds. I'll even add a debug.log here. Debug.log, finishing tutorial, marking tutorial as complete, and I'll add tutorial. Boom. So I'll report whatever this value is. I'll name this first dialog tutorial. Boom. Now when I press play, I should see it. Then after 2 seconds, boom. Marking as complete. Marking it as complete. Boom. Now when I go back, I press play. It will now not play it because it was already done. But if I were to change this to something like -0, and then I press play again, I see the tutorial again. So that is how you can do a basic form of playing a tutorial whenever you start a level. And if you don't want the tutorial completion stuff, like only playing it once, then you can of course just do this. You could say make it always equal to 0 and slash that out, so then it'll play every time. The catch is you need to know when to play which tutorial, and this is kind of an on-load type of situation. I could also have void trigger next tutorial by a string ID. So this would be if you hit a trigger volume like a collider, and that is supposed to trigger a tutorial, you could do it like this. I have 2 types of trigger next tutorial. One just finds the first one available. The other one, I pass along a tutorial ID, and that will be used for the basis of my tutorial trigger. So I'm also going to have a duplicate of this method called public tutorial object get current tutorial object with string tutorial. So now I can also do a version of it where I have where I'm looking for a particular one. So for every one of my T in tutorials, if T dot name ID. Get if t.tutorial ID is equal to the tutorial that I asked for, then do all this stuff. That's all that's different. I'm now passing along a tutorial as well. So now I can say, I'll move all this into here. Actually, wait. I'll move this. I'll leave it. I'll just copy pasta. Boom. Get rid of this. Trigger next tutorial if tutorial object is equal to get current tutorial object of tutorial. And then I can say if next tutorial is equal to null, blah, blah, blah. And you'll notice this is all the same as this one. And so that's why I kind of think it might be better if I could say void trigger tutorial object, and I actually pass along a tutorial object, and I'll name it next tutorial so that I can easily copy and paste this stuff. And I don't need this value anymore because it will be passed along. I don't need any of this. Oh, I need that close. That close curly. And now that I have this method that will take in a specific tutorial, I can remove all this. And I can just run, what's it called? Trigger tutorial object, next tutorial. Boom, just like that. And I can do the same here. So now I just saved a lot of code, and if I ever need to change my tutorial code, I only change it in one spot. I don't have to change it in two. I'm going to rename this one to input tutorial, just for clarity. So if I did pass along a tutorial, everything should work the same, but now I can either launch the next available one, or I can launch one by a specific name. So now, boom. I didn't receive any tutorials there, which makes sense. For sanity, just so I don't have to always rename the thing, I'm going to remove that check to see if the tutorial is already played. Just like this. Make it always pass along the number 0, just so I don't have to worry about it. It always pass off false for has it played yet. So now I should see the tutorial right when it pops up. Unless I'm crazy. Oh, whoops. Thought I changed that. Oh, get current. Oh, right. See, this is the having to change in 2 spots thing. This is the annoying part, but it's all good. Boom, I did the same change in 2 spots. Really, I could reformat that code to only happen in 1 spot, but it's all good. So we're popping over here. I'm pressing play. Gimme John, cool. Now I'm gonna set it up so that when I touch these, they will trigger a different tutorial. And let's show how we'll do this. I'll call this tutorial object collectible. And I'll make the dialogue be, they'll both be sword. It'll be like, sword boy, collect these objects to get absolute power. Sword boy. But don't forget, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So we'll get, when I collect the first one, it'll play this. When I collect the second one, it'll play this unless I re-enable those, the tutorial this thing over here. If I re-enable that, then it'll only play once, but I'm setting it up so it'll play multiple times. Let's go to pickup item. Pickup item has this pickup behavior. And I'll add a new item here called public string. Actually, well, I already have the item. And the item, I believe, should have a name. So let's look at it. Go to definition. Aha, item type. An item name. So I could probably just do this. I'll go to my item, pick up item. My item is type shield. And I'll copy this shield. And I'll put it in the dialog, no, the tutorial. Here we are, collectible. I'll name it shield collectible. And I'll name it here as well, just so we have it all the same. And I guess I should make it a shield, not a sword, for consistency. Boom. Boom. Shield boy. All right, so now we have a little tutorial that can play. And when it's been collected, play sound effect. Oh, I'm in the wrong spot. I was like, where's my collection stuff? Let me go back to that script. Pick up item. Pick up behavior. There it is. If I is hit by the player, get collected. If I'm collected, then get the manager. Tell the manager to add stuff. And now I'll add a /2b tell tutorial manager that I've been collected in case there's a tutorial about me. I can say tutorial manager tm equals game object of find object of type tutorial manager. If tm is not equal to null, just like this add item thing was not equal to null. If I found a tm, a tutorial manager, then tm.play.trigger.tutorial. I'll add public void on item collected string. I'll say inventory item. I'll just run this method. Or attempt item collection tutorial. I could run on item collected whenever this happens. So tm.on item collected. This my item. Pass that along. I could also have done it a slightly different way, but this way I can control everything inside of the tutorial manager. So string target tutorial equals target tutorial ID equals item.name plus underscore collectible. And this will just be a generic term that we use for when we have collectible tutorials, as I defined over here. Come on. Right there, sword shield underscore collectible. That means I just want to add this to the end of its name, And we should be good to go. Now I can say trigger tutorial, pass along the string ID, trigger tutorial object based on a string, I believe. Yep, trigger next tutorial, there it is. Trigger next tutorial, target tutorial ID. And so let's see what that does. Trigger next tutorial, I'll pass along the ID. It'll find the ID, and then it'll trigger the tutorial object. That should all be raring to go. Now if I press play, and I walk into... Oh, did I remember to add in Tutorial Manager? I need to add that. There needs to be 2 elements. One of them needs to be the sword collectible. Boom. So now not only will I get that initial tutorial here, boom, and boom, I can also walk over to here, boom, and trigger a different tutorial. So that's another thing you can do with it. This is how you could trigger dialogues with walking into things. That one won't do it because that was a sword, not a shield. Now I have a sword and a shield. Alright, well, I hope that was useful. It doesn't have to be a tutorial manager. You could have colliders that directly feed into the dialog manager if you have it set up like that. There's 100 different ways to do it, and this was just one of them. This is specifically if you wanted to have little instructions that happen every once in a while, and you want to keep track of when those instructions have been played so you don't play them multiple times, all that kind of thing. So I hope that was useful, and I'll see you next time.